The Washington Commanders are back. After decades of mediocrity, the team went 12-5 in 2024, which is their highest win total since 1991 and only their fourth season with double-digit wins since those glory days. After being little more than an afterthought in the NFC East, their transformation in 2024 has rapidly elevated them to one of the most exciting teams in the NFL. From a thrilling rookie quarterback to an experienced head coach and ownership, this Commanders team is a different animal right now, and here's how they did it. To start with, let's talk about how things looked in the nation's capital just 12 short months ago. The 2023 Commanders lost their final 8 games of the year, going 4-13 on the back of several dismal losses down the stretch. They gave up at least 37 points on 6 separate occasions that year, on their way to having the league's worst scoring defense with 518 points allowed, one of the worst marks in league history. On offense, things had looked promising at times, with young quarterback Sam Howell reaching nearly 4,000 yards through the air. However, in the last 6 weeks of the season, Howell played his way out of the starting gig in Washington, with the Nader being a loss to the Jets, in which he had a passer rating of just 1.7. At the end of the season, Ron Rivera was unsurprisingly fired, bringing an end to 4 uninspiring years in DC, where the team went a combined 26-40-1. With Sam Howell clearly not the answer, it was time for a reset, complete with a new quarterback, head coach, and general manager for the 2024 season. This, of course, would be a great chance for a fresh start for the new owner Josh Harris, who bought the team for $6.05 billion from the much maligned previous owner, Dan Snyder. Snyder's time in charge saw the Commanders go through 10 head coaches and start 27 different quarterbacks. During this time, Washington fell further and further behind their divisional rivals, having to watch both the Eagles and Giants win divisional titles as they became a byword for dysfunction. Snyder's reign would come to an end in 2023 following mounting pressure to sell the team amidst a series of league investigations around toxic workplace culture, including sexual harassment, intimidation, and bullying. This led to a $10 million fine from the league and led to Snyder agreeing to sell the team to Josh Harris, an investor and co-founder of Apollo Global Management who grew up just 20 miles away from Northwest Stadium. Harris brought experience in owning sports teams, also owning a stake in the Philadelphia 76ers, the New Jersey Devils, and the English soccer club Crystal Palace. But turning around the fortunes of this historic but flagging franchise definitely seemed to be his biggest task yet from the outset. This began with the hiring of a new general manager and head coach. Enter Adam Peters, the team's new GM for 2024. Peters has been involved in pro football since 2003, where he began as a scout for the New England Patriots. From there, he moved to Denver, becoming the Broncos' director of scouting during the successful Peyton Manning era. From 2017 to 2023, he worked for the 49ers, becoming the team's assistant GM in 2021. Peters was an ideal candidate for the role and played a big part in the Niners' recent success, helping to unearth successful late-round picks like George Kittle, Fred Warner, and Dre Greenlaw as the team established themselves as one of the league's best. As a result, it was only a matter of time before a team appointed Peters for the top job himself, and Washington ended up being that lucky team. At head coach, the team went with experience, appointing ex-Falcons head coach Dan Quinn to the role. Quinn has also been in the league for over 2 decades and was the mastermind of the legendary Legion of Boom Seahawks defenses of the early 2010s, as well as the head coach that led the Falcons to the Super Bowl in 2017 on the back of the league's very best scoring offense. Quinn was ultimately fired by Atlanta in 2020, but he spent the next 3 seasons as defensive coordinator in Dallas, coordinating a top 10 defense 3 years in a row during his time with the Cowboys. As a result, the Commanders opted to give him a second chance as head coach as the team kicked off a bold new era. Of course, the next thing that needed fixing in the offseason was the most important position in football: quarterback. The Commanders had endured a brutal time of it at quarterback for many years, having tried repeatedly to find their franchise guy, selecting 5 first-round quarterbacks since their last Super Bowl title in 1991, and never quite finding the long-term solution. However, in the 2024 draft, the team had earned the 2nd overall pick and another stab at finding the future of this franchise. Thankfully, they hit the jackpot this time around. In the 2024 draft, the Commanders took LSU quarterback Jayden Daniels, following a phenomenal Heisman Trophy winning season in Death Valley. Daniels had a phenomenal 40-4 touchdown to interception ratio in 2023 and had 4,946 total yards of offense as an elite quarterback through the air and on the ground. Daniels dazzled all throughout his rookie season, looking remarkably composed and comfortable, constantly showing great decision-making in the pocket and while scrambling. In total, he racked up 3,568 yards through the air and another 891 on the ground, which is an all-time rookie record. His reward looks set to be the Offensive Rookie of the Year award, having been the front-runner all year long. His consistency has been a real standout, and his status as a superstar was confirmed off the back of several stunning last-second victories. The most notable of these was his Hail Mary game winner against the Bears in Week 8, and the game winner against divisional rivals Philadelphia with just 6 seconds left, which gave the team a crucial 36-33 victory in Week 16. Having just turned 24, he seems like the guy who will be leading this offense for a long time to come, already appearing confident beyond his years. Despite being in his first season in the NFL, he regularly demonstrated an ability to turn up for his team when they needed him the most, to the extent that many believed the Chicago Bears were wrong to take the generational prospect Caleb Williams ahead of Daniels by the end of the year. Daniels is not the only part of this rebuild that has hit for Washington though. Elsewhere in the draft, defensive tackle Jerzon Newton, cornerback Mike Sammerstill, and offensive tackle Brandon Coleman have all made contributions to this team, which was littered with problems entering the year. In fact, there were so many problems with this roster that the draft alone was never going to be enough. Thankfully, Adam Peters knocked his first free agency period out the park. On offense, the team added veteran running back Austin Ekeler, whose best days looked like they might be behind him after 7 years on the Chargers. But despite missing 5 games, Ekeler still put up 733 scrimmage yards, good for 4th in the roster, and providing another threat in the backfield alongside Brian Robinson Jr. Another veteran free agent acquisition was tight end Zach Ertz, now in his 12th season as a pro. Ertz quickly became Daniels' second favorite target and added 654 yards and 7 touchdowns, remaining an elite red zone threat and a key part of keeping this offense moving. This also applied to ex-Chiefs guard Nick Allegretti, who played 99% of all snaps, filling a gap on the interior offensive line. However, it was on defense that this team made most of its biggest moves. The 2023 defensive unit was one of the very worst in league history and needed reinforcements at every level. This began with the signing of future Hall of Famer Bobby Wagner at inside linebacker. During his time as a Seahawk, Wagner established himself as one of the very best of all time at the position, but many wondered how much he would have left in the tank at the age of 34. Wagner immediately became a huge part of the defense, leading the team in tackles with 132, including 10 for loss. Having a guy like Wagner in the middle of the defense gave the unit the culture boost it so desperately needed, with Peters immediately reaping the rewards of his decision to tap into the experience of a 10-time All-Pro and Super Bowl champion. Another linebacker added in free agency was Frankie Louvu, formerly of the Giants and Panthers. Louvu was one of the few positives on the 2023 Panthers, and the Commanders signed him to a $31 million 3-year deal as a result. In his first year in Washington, he racked up 99 tackles and 8 sacks alongside Wagner in the second level. In the secondary, they added another ex-Panther in Jeremy Chinn on a 1-year deal, which also worked out very well. Chinn posted 117 tackles on the year, and his presence in the secondary helped the Commanders to the league's 3rd best passing defense in yards allowed, which would have been impossible to imagine just 1 year earlier. Now, there is obviously still work to be done on defense, as the team did still rank 18th in points allowed, but it's undeniable that things are trending in the right direction under defensive coordinator Joe Witt. Through some key veteran free agency pickups, this team looked unrecognizable from the 2023 campaign, benefiting massively from a significant culture change led by guys who know exactly what success looks like. Going into the 2024 season, expectations were low in DC, with the preseason win total set at 6.5 in most places. But very quickly, Dan Quinn's men showed exactly what they were about and put the league on notice. The team's first big win came on Monday Night Football in Week 3, where Jayden Daniels had a superb game, outdueling fellow LSU alumnus Joe Burrow in a dramatic 38-33 win over the Bengals. On national television, the country got to see just what this team was capable of, and that they wouldn't be whipping boys any longer. That game also showed the first real shots of Terry McLaurin's relationship with Daniels. McLaurin, now in his 6th year on the team, finally had a quarterback who could help him thrive as a wide receiver one, having suffered through the likes of Carson Wentz, Case Keenum, and Taylor Heineke under center. Now with a legit franchise QB, McLaurin looks poised to take his game to the next level, and him and Daniels are already off to a great start. McLaurin had 13 touchdowns in 2024, far eclipsing his previous high of 7, and he's obviously the biggest scoring threat on the team. But he's not alone, with Ertz, Ekeler, and third-year running back Brian Robinson Jr. also playing their part on this well-rounded offense. This is a team that constantly pulls it out in clutch moments, as evidenced by the fact that Daniels has 5 touchdowns in the final 30 seconds or overtime as a rookie, the highest figure since the merger in 1970. Daniels undoubtedly has one of the best clutch genes in the league, and it looks like he'll be a superstar in Washington, finally providing the team with a real franchise quarterback, arguably for the first time since Joe Theismann. The Commanders' 2024 campaign produced a 12-5 record, which is their best year since 1991, and they look well placed to be a real contender in this NFC East going forward. Both the Giants and Cowboys have been left in the dust by Washington already, with only the Eagles blocking them from the division title in 2024. Philadelphia does, of course, boast one of the league's best rosters, but the Commanders did beat them in a thriller in Week 16 in just their second win over the Birds in their last 8 meetings. There's no doubt that Washington can compete with the league's elite right now, and they have the league's 3rd most cap space going into 2025, allowing plenty of opportunity to further bolster this roster. For a franchise that has endured so much disappointment and underachievement since the early 90s, right now is a fantastic time to be a Washington Commanders fan. After the dark days of the Dan Snyder era, things have changed dramatically in such a short space of time, and there's no telling what the limit is for this team. Dan Quinn and his general manager are pulling in the same direction and have nailed the draft and free agency. The culture seems to have shifted, with the franchise seeming to be in a much more positive place right now. And, of course, they have the face of the franchise at quarterback in Jayden Daniels, arguably the most exciting young talent in the entire NFL. The sky is the limit for this team, and some of the league's longest-suffering fans are along for the ride. So, is Jayden Daniels an elite quarterback already, and when do you see them reaching a Super Bowl? Let us know in the comments.